To you.
Good to see you too.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Keeping warm on this side of the world.
Yeah, whereabouts are you?
Uh, Vancouver, we got like an abnormal snowfall.
You got a what? Sorry.
We got a snowfall and we normally don't get snow, so it happens.
Oh, very nice. It's going to be 3 more months till I get snow, which, well, not snow until I get cold. Don't really get snow
Yeah,
in Australia unless you go to the mountains. Then maybe you'll get them.
yeah, but basically the same, I think.
Yeah, very nice. Teddy, how about you? How's things going on your side?
Good, Ben. Also in Vancouver at the moment with Smeet, kind of caved into. I just got back from a wedding in Banff, which was like minus 37.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I've never felt anything like that in my life.
Jesus.
And I don't think I ever want to do that again. It's been since like last week when we did the storyboarding. I'm not been able to focus on anything since because I'm still working on a project that's wrapping up at the end of this month. This weekend was really all about surviving.
Definitely. I mean, in that sort of weather, that makes me feel like it would be that kind of ice apocalypse weather. No idea if it actually is, but
Yeah, you can get frostbite apparently within like 90 seconds of exposed skin when you get to that temperature. Yeah, so it was.
Where was this?
In Banff. Is that
in Canada?
The middle of the Rockies. Yeah, it's about 16-hour drive or so, I think, from Vancouver, which we did.
Who chose to have a wedding there?
Right, yeah, no one actually lived there. It was a destination wedding.
See, their destination was frostbite then.
Yeah.
Very much.
We wish them well.
Claire, how about you? Good to see you. How are you?
Hey, yeah, I'm good. Trying to wrap up some projects here at work, but I've just been like trying to collect some assets from different projects that I want to use in my case studies, and I think kind of coming back to like the capabilities deck could be a good like reset in some ways because it's pretty easy to get pretty micro and start thinking a little too much about the details. So yeah. Luckily here in Texas, our power grid held out through the cold weather, cold for us anyway. And so no ice apocalypse this time.
I'm glad. Jonathan and Lana, good to see you guys. Thank you for joining in. How are you, Jonathan? Figured I'd check in with everyone before we kick off.
Hi. Yeah, I'm doing well. This is the first one I've been able to join, actually, because the beginning of my year has been really, really crazy, but excited to sit in on this.
Yeah, good to see you. Thank you for dropping in. Whereabouts, do you want to give us maybe, since you're probably new to the call, I think we've all seen each other a little bit. Do you want to maybe give us a little intro?
Sure. My name is Jonathan. I'm a designer. I'm a design manager, actually, in Colorado. And yeah, I've seen lots of interesting stuff come across, and I've been trying to keep up. I've been trying to make them, but like my day is just all meetings, so it's hard to figure out how to get it in. But yeah, happy I was able to hop in on this one. I'm looking for design manager roles, which are very hard to come by right now. But thankfully I still am employed. So yeah.
Makes it a bit easier. Gives you a bit more time.
Definitely. For sure.
Lana, good to see you. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Is it John or Jonathan? How do you prefer?
Jonathan, yeah.
Jonathan,
Thank you.
Cool. Back to you, Lana.
Oh, hi. Yeah, good to be here. Excited to like see the capabilities deck.
Me too. I think it's going to be interesting. Okay, guys. So this is one of our portfolio live sessions. So we just rounded up the resumes. So I'll do a bit of a recap. If you haven't been to these are a lot more different and chaotic than our usual sessions. I consider them along the same lines of Let's Play videos for those who are familiar with that sort of content, but slightly less fun. Depends on who you are, though. So let's do a bit of a recap where we're up from last time for those who haven't seen. So we started off this entire series, so to speak, with a bit of an audit. So we were focusing on so the focus of these sessions is the work that I'm doing. So I have to build my portfolio. We thought it would be a great idea to stream it with no prep outside of it so you could actually see how it all looks. Now, let's find where we started all of this. So the portfolio operating system is one of our core products that everyone in the pro group has access to. We started this project by using the Project Audit Lab to go back over our work and see what were the core projects that we were going to work on. So we did a bit of work there, just cataloging, exploring the different sorts of stuff I've done in the past. Then we mainly focused in on the resume. So we focused on content over everything else, and we drafted our experience for the latest 6 to 7 roles that have been on here. Then after we had gone through that, we went through a few rounds of resume drafting. So this was our first draft, just getting all of our roles in there, getting the dot points in, taking a look at if the overall idea for the visual layout that I'd had in my head would work or not. And then eventually we turn it into something a little more refined. And that's where we are at the moment. And the next step is going to be the capabilities deck. Now, today, we're probably not going to get through it all, of course. The goal is to get as close to a first rough draft as possible and then fill in the gaps along the way. Now, I put this resume out to some colleagues who work in the field. There was some feedback that we anticipated we would get. One of them is that in terms of targeting a specific role, all of these roles are too broad. On the top left, we've got a senior designer and team lead. Then we go into kind of like a design manager and community lead. We go into an executive designer, service designer, strategic designer, visual designer. So the work my friend is involved in that I might occasionally do some work with him is a consultant. And so whilst this is good as a general role for getting maybe in-house roles, as a consultant, we often want to target specific keywords and specific roles. So if I was targeting a senior designer, then while some of these are useful, we'd want all of these to be more tailored towards the work a senior designer would do. My case study club talks a lot about facilitation and growth strategy. Great for a startup, not very good for a consultant life. The executive designer does pretty decently. It's got usability testing. It's got some proposal writing. It's not very strong, but that role was very brief. And the senior designer has a bit around mentorship, and managing, which is good. It's got some facilitation, which is more around business areas and planning days. But if I was focusing on senior designer, then the management, the design system work, more of the design system work, the UX backlog, those are all the kind of keywords and content that a senior designer would primarily be involved in. Similar goes for a lot of our past one. My This Is Doing role, it talks about facilitating a massive festival. So it's kind of half split between a designer and a facilitator, which is okay, but it does depend on what we're applying for. So if we wanted to, we would have to update this and kind of tweak it, remove some things, and maybe sub other roles into this in order to target some roles. Okay, but let's go over the plan for today. So let's see, where are we? I've gotten myself lost. So today we need a capabilities deck. And the goal here is we need anything we could send. I applied for 3 roles and have been asked to send a portfolio through, but I have nothing. So that's kind of the core problem here, is we need a rough draft. It doesn't need to be perfect, just so they have something they can look over that maybe makes a bit of curiosity. So we need a rough draft of a portfolio. Need 3 case studies in it. And it needs to target, we might need 2 versions as well. So we need to target a senior UX designer role. Actually double check that is the role. So you guys are going to see my whole emails and everything right now and everything I've been up to. I should clear my computer before I share these. Should have double checked. Everyone can see my screen, right? I might need a verbal reminder. Yes. I can't see you guys, so someone might have to just verbally
we
let
can
me
see
know.
you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I applied for a role here recently, senior product designer. It was available on LinkedIn. It was on for a company called HireUp. I said I kind of love their mission. I've attached my resume, which was the new resume, and asked for a casual chat. However, I've told them I can't actually attach a portfolio because I run this community of designers and we're in the middle of streaming that design. I don't think they actually read that email. This seems like a blanket template, but close enough. They've asked, can I share their portfolio to get it in front of the hiring team for review? Now that's interesting. So they're going to put it in the hiring team, which I don't know if that involves the design manager, the actual design team, which I assume there will be at least 1 or 2 representatives. So we're looking at the senior product designer role. Let's jump over. So we need to, yep, cool. Product designer role. But I am super keen on more design management and also kind of facilitation as a core thing. So I like, these are kind of my 3 core areas. We might make a version for each in the future, but today we're going with a generic version. And then we can kind of sub in roles, sub out that. Cool, general version. Here we go. And I think there might be someone in the waiting room for the call. 1 second. Thank you, Noya, for letting me know. There we go. Noya, are you there? I saw your call come through, so that was a good way of letting me know that you're in the waiting room. She's probably joining in now. Okay, so today's schedule, we have our, if we jump over to our perfect portfolio deck, I'm going to stutter at this rate. We've got a lot here. We have the interview deck template, which we will not be working on. We have the capabilities deck template, which we will be working on. So let's grab that and bring this over. I'm going to hash out this schedule for today, and then we'll check in where everyone is vibing with this. And then we'll actually put timers on. Without timers, this just goes on, which we definitely don't want. So let's take a look at our capability deck template and what we're going to be working on today. So we are going to smash out the first 2 pretty fast. It's mostly just a how I got here. If we jump over to the slide deck, there's a few slides here I personally really like. I prefer this over the initial introduction. So I'm actually going to take this and chuck it down here. I might steal that later instead. I might swap these 2. See what else. I really do like this me at a glance. I've always wanted to use this silhouette thing. So we're just going to grab that here as well. That's just going to add a little bit of extra onto this because we've got a timeline history of me, but then I kind of want to show a bit more about me. If we had a design philosophy section, we might also include that. So these are optional extras, but we're not going to do them unless we have time to do them last. So we might include these 3 instead of these 2, but we will work off the template for now, and then we'll sub these in when we want. Okay, we don't need these covers. These are just kind of part of the portfolio operating system, just to let you know what's up. Let's get this all in order. We are going to have 1 longer case study, and that's going to be our hero case study, which I don't think we have identified. because we were mainly working on resume, but let's get that in place anyway. That alignment's going to kill me, but that's okay. And then we will add just 2 templates for the 2 potential supporting case studies here. Now, something that is irking me a little bit here is you go straight from a single case study, then straight away into 2 one-pages. I find that a little jarring. So I'm just going to come over here and maybe steal one of these templates and just add a transitionary screen. Just because it really personally gets my design chops going. I'm going to just call this other work, which is not a nice way of calling it at all, but we will keep it there nonetheless. I might actually turn this into a screen that kind of tells you more about what you're about to see down the line. Maybe it's 4 case studies plus other things. Okay, this is our starting template. We might move some other stuff in here. Sometimes I like to show, hey, here's like a snapshot of me in tons of other ways, like what else I do. Here's kind of my hobby or something about me that's less about work, really. Do we have a template for that? No. That's going to be something to add at one stage or another. Okay, so our schedule today, we're going to do quick 10, so let's go 5 minutes. Let's keep the pressure high. Intro slides. We want to map out our case studies, what goes where. And we'll focus on headers for our case studies. We'll see how, and then our hero case study if we have time as well. So I'd love to dive deep on that, but that's going to take some effort. So that's our schedule for today. We're going to spend about 5 minutes on each of these, and we'll see whether these time actually keep on track or not. Okay, I'm going to check in with people. We've just fleshed out a little plan for today. How is everyone feeling? I'm going to stop sharing briefly. Is everyone good with kind of the direction we're going in, the vibe that's happening? Yep, a thumbs up from Claire. Thumbs up from Lana. Thank you for the thumbs up. Teddy, Jonathan, awesome. Now, if you have any questions while I work through this, we'll take breaks. Yeah, I'm trying to think out loud, but also then narrate at the same time. There's going to be some hairy parts to doing this that's going to kind of go well or poorly. We'll find out. We'll see together how we go. Summit says, my internet is acting funky. You're going to restart your computer. Cool. Hey, Noya, I'm going to give you facilitator access. If someone jumps in the waiting room, can you just let them in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, sharing my screen. I'm going to chuck a timer on my side. Timers are important or else it just never works. Okay, verbal yes from anyone. You can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Wahoo. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so 5-minute timer first. This is going to be interesting. And we are go. I'm going to chuck some music on. I have a kicker for banjo and bass, Western style music, so we may have some music happening at the same time. If it's distracting, please let me know. Okay, it's distracting me. That was quick. Changing music. Please hold. Cool. Okay, so we're going to start with the intro. Pretty easy. This is not me. We're going to just go, hello, my name is Ben. I need to stop sharing my screen very briefly. I need to just jump over to my Google Drive. That's where all my passwords and stuff are. Hence the sharing screen stop. Okay, where's my professional pictures? I totally have professional pictures. Just one of them. I just triggered.
I'm so
Ricardo.
sorry. That was me, actually. I hit.
No, that was perfectly timed. Exactly what was happening.
I hit the wrong hotkeys.
I'm so for that. No, that's perfect. So I have this totally professional picture that I accidentally got in a role that I left like a week after. So we're going to use that for now. However, I actually don't like this picture at all, but we're going to use it because, I don't know, it looks professionally. I was so hungover when this picture got taken, just for the amusement, if anyone was curious. I think I'd gone to like a birthday party the night before. It was a rough time. Apparently I don't look very hungover. We're not going to zoom in on that. But so I prefer more down-to-earth pictures. This is way too professional than I am now. This was when I was a consultant. And I remember having a person on a coaching call say, oh, you should change your picture. You weren't as like, I think they meant intimidating from a professional lens as they thought. So I might eventually change my picture to be something a bit more down to earth, which I prefer. But in the realm of government and applying, people like that. So that's nice. Okay, we're going to leave everything else. That's nice and easy. I do still like having my whole senior designer, coach, and facilitator on here. It sounds fancy. It's really just summing up 3 core roles that I do, which I think works pretty well. Oh, where do we put this? I like it at the top, but I like it at the bottom. About midway. No, it's not going to work. We're just going to chuck it there. A little more. Got to not fiddle with the visual design. We're not touching visual designs or branding until absolute last. That is a trap. Don't do it. You will get lost. Now, in our template, we have a current and future how I got here. For me, we're not really going to do that. We're going to go, there's not much point, because if I told people where I want to go, wouldn't really add anything to this. Maybe future would say head of design, that's where I want to be. But for me, that's actually not true. So I'm not going to include that. I don't have that sort of ambition. My ambition is to buy a van and travel around Australia for a year and not work, at least not work my day job. So I could tell people maybe that I was going for design manager, but not really up for that for my particular pathway. Senior designer or a design manager is still pretty good. That's kind of where I'd cap out for now, unless I was leading a startup. That's a different sort of thing. But okay, let's go 2019. I don't really like having timelines, just because it doesn't really do what I want. I don't really want people seeing the timeline, especially given most of my experience is maybe the past 4 years. So I prefer to just emphasize the quantity rather than the quality, or rather than not quality. Quality is what I want to emphasize, but the timeline. So sure, I have a bachelor. Why not? Bachelor of Science. I do actually. Do you have a picture of me somewhere that I could totally use for this? But we will leave that till later. Okay, cool. So we got, that's totally me. Let's go with that. Oh, the 5 minutes already. Okay, we're chucking another 5 minutes on because I am not ready. That's what I get for yammering away. Roles that I want to emphasize: service designer. That's a pretty cool role. Senior designer at CASA. Now my degree, something that always seems to make people interested is I did my degree in a specialization in professional science engagement. My goal here is I want to just add enough about me that kind of quirks a bit of curiosity beyond my resume. It's like, oh, this person's got some interesting stuff that we're probably not going to see elsewhere. So if I can come up with a combination of things here that are interesting, then I think that will lend itself to making me a little more memorable. If this doesn't work out well, I maybe instead would have the me at a glance, and then something here that's like more about me. And this would be kind of what are the stuff I do outside of work. So that would be something like I could do case study club, or it as leading a design community. That anyone else really is going to have that who's applying for any of these jobs. I might also do mentorship. Then if I have something else, I don't really have hobbies. I just work all the time. So that makes it a little hard. I do have hobbies. I can't think of a hobby, but yes.
You're saying to use one of these templates at a glance, more about me, or the how I got here.
Thank you for asking. So you could use one or all of them. So really, you're looking for a way here. The goal here is I'm looking for a way to communicate unique aspects about myself, to kind of communicate. Since we're going for a design manager role, I want them to kind of know a bit of the breadth and wealth of experience I've got. The me at a glance is a good way to showcase here's kind of what I'm made of in terms of my skills. The more about me is kind of giving a bit more of an insight into who you are as a person by utilizing your own personal experiences and hobbies to lend that extra bit of personality. So
Right.
I want to use probably 2 slides here. I don't really want to use more than that. So I'm going to have to choose which one I want to actually do. They've already seen my resume. So that's why the how I got here, I don't want to be a direct copy and paste from my resume. I want it to be a little different if I can. But that can also be pretty hard to get going. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Cool. I figured out what I'd add. Sometimes I volunteer for TEDx. So maybe if I add that, that's something pretty good. At a glance, let's also do that while we're here. Then we'll choose which slides we're actually going to include here. I am mostly facilitation. Actually talking. I shouldn't say talking. I should do public speaking. Nope. Let's do facilitation. So let's go workshops. The other part, half of me is LinkedIn. Kind of looking for a mix of personal work and, hey, if you can make it funny, that's always nice, but not necessarily easy to do. Trying to put your own humor and your own sense of personality into these things can take a lot of work. It can be really difficult. Coaching, and this is just a rough go. What's something else? We could go maybe marketing. And we're going to add the last role as design manager at Case Study Club. Why not? A few things we can do here. If we want to customize this, but we still want to keep our roles here, we could add the, we could do a little bit of a description here in terms of like outcomes, which is kind of what we did for our resume. It's just an option here. There's a lot of work probably to get this to a stage where it's good enough, but this kind of communicates most of what we're trying to say about this slide. It doesn't have the images, it doesn't have everything, so we're going to do that. What are we going to keep? I like the more about me instead of the me at a glance. Like, don't get me wrong, kind of dig the style of it, but I'm not really connecting with that right now. So maybe we'll add it back in later. Okay, our 5 minutes is almost up, so let's bring this across. Now, what don't I like? What needs improvement? Well, we got circles and circles, so that kind of irks me. We're focused on our roles and not really the pivotal kind of moments across my career that maybe communicate something good. So what I'm going to do here is I want to shift these. That gives me a bit of insight into my think place role was pretty pivotable. Keep the roles, but I'm still really not satisfied with this. I don't like the, hey, here's my roles. I'm like, I sent you my resume. What's the point of me adding roles here again? How I got here really talks about kind of why am I here? Which I think there is a lot more that could be done for this section. The more about me, however, I like this a lot more. It kind of says the kind of three things that I'm about. So this is a bit nicer. It could have way more to it, but we're going to keep this a little basic.
Hey, Ben.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think
Go for
there's
it.
some questions for you in the chat.
Please. Okay. Let's go through those. Let's put a pause here. And something we've actually identified in Case Study Club is something we're missing right now before I answer that question is, this is all good to think of it out loud, but what's a good framework for actually figuring these things out? Is something we're missing from Case Study Club right now that I really want to work on. Jonathan, you had a question.
Yeah, sorry. Kind of a minor question, but
No,
you had
please.
mentioned talking about like humor and like removing stuff in the head of design thing, but that you wanted to like travel in a van. Like, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious about some of the humor aspects and like when to include them, what that line is. I feel like I've tried to do that before unsuccessfully.
Yeah. It can be really hard.
So,
I try, and if I am trying to insert humor, I guess I'm trying to do it in ways that are kind of visual, that maybe it's like a header that's a bit of a play on word that you read and you're like, oh, I like that. These aren't really clear directives, of course. But so, yeah, in terms of adding personality, that can be a really difficult thing because you are trying to figure out, what's your voice? How can you word this in a way that makes sense to everyone, but also kind of has your tone to it? I highly recommend, if you've ever done writing, to take some time and like, how do you write to your friends? So that's an interesting question. Like, what kind of jokes do you make? What language do you use? And see, can you bring any of that maybe into the way you word your portfolio, but still keeping it, of course, understandable and professional? Because how you talk to your friends and probably family and all that is kind of your real, authentic voice. So that's not an easy thing to do, obviously. Yeah. Any other questions? We've got a terrible intro, which I don't like, but it's something that's we've got to push through on that.
I just wanted to say, just so everyone knows, if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, on the left toolbar where you see your mic and video functions, underneath there's one called Q. If you hover over it or select it, you can see, you can select one of those, and that'll actually give us a notification when you do have a question or something to say.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we now need to choose the case studies. And this is a section I personally dread, and I think all of us kind of do. Now, ideally, we would have gone and done the portfolio positioning before this. If you haven't, it's definitely going to be useful. So let's jump back over to the Notion and see what we've got. So we worked a little in the project lab. Now, these are kind of our achievements. You may have a case study that actually wraps up all of these achievements. You may have that maybe your case study actually covers multiple achievements that we've gotten written down here. So if I jump on the most easiest, this is a really quick noted one. A festival I ran, we had about 200 people live on call, 30 tickets. That would make a single case study pretty well. Whereas maybe this one, which is coming up with the UX backlog for our design team, wouldn't really make a single case study. It's a bit small for that. I could, but it would be pretty light. So maybe instead I would wrap up things as maybe this would be a supporting case study. It might be a mention in a larger case study. However, the biggest thing that I've done recently, other than Case Study Club, is going to be this big design system work. So I think that would be good to add here. However, in this design system work, we also had extra stuff that I think would enhance the design system case study as a whole. So I would like to mention the UX backlog because it's kind of related to the design system. And at least having those two, I think, cover a pretty good amount of stuff. If we jump back over to Miro, actually, we did have, let's go to Miro. We did have a case study canvas that I completed as part of this. So let's take a look. That might help with a bit of a reference. Just jump over to that. Zoom out. I don't think did I do one? I'm pretty sure I did one. Okay, yes. So I did this kind of early case study canvas for the design system work. I kind of mapped out the activities. I mapped out the solution, and we can see we've got the UX backlog. We've got some extra just notes here in terms of what happened. For the 1-pages and the shorter case studies, we don't communicate all this. What we do is we kind of communicate the solution, we communicate the outcome, we try and get a really clear business and user problem, not the problem we uncover along the way, but a really clear business and user problem. We then try and maybe show the outcomes of some of the processes that relate to the solution. So if I was to, we're not going to dive deep into this maybe in this session. If we have time, we'll see. But maybe the next session we'll be building out that hero case study, but we want to map everything out first, or else we'll just be stuck in the details. So this is a bit of a strange one, but we're going to give it a go doing it from scratch right now. I'm going to chuck 5 minutes on and see if we can speed run this. Okay. I heard a question, I think, ping go up.
Sorry about that crazy timing. I just wanted to confirm where in the Notion you are kind of referencing for this exercise. I haven't been, yeah.
Sorry. So when we did the audit, that's not the audit. That's slides. So this came before the case study canvas. And we mapped out some outcomes for the design system. We mapped out some outcomes for all the different achievements that might relate to this case study. What I'm actually going to refer to now is instead that canvas. I'm going to use this canvas to see if I can get a really high level short form case study using a combination of this canvas and actually the drafted outcomes over on the project audit. Because I've got some stuff drafted here that isn't in the canvas, like I've got numbers around iterations. So for the outcomes, I'll probably reference some of this. But for the short form case study, I'm actually going to use the canvas as kind of my first guide. Ideally, I would actually use storyboarding here more effectively. So actually, let's quickly pivot for a second. I have a storyboard middle and these. So what we would actually do here instead, I would prefer to do this. I can ad-lib it, but if we were following the full workshop suite, we would actually use this. So these were the case study canvases, case study storyboards. So this is a bit long for our short form story. So I'm actually just going to take one of them. And even though it says middle, I'm just going to use this generically. So I could use this with the canvas to map out that short form case study instead. If I was to do that, let's take a look what that would look like. I would keep this really basic to start off with. This would be the cover that we saw on that template. Then we would want to go over kind of we're in the business problems section. Just ignore any of the middle or words on this storyboard now. So I'd come over here, maybe to business problem, and let's see what's most compelling here. If I had more time, I might actually grab new post-it notes and then try and maybe summarize this. I might try and turn it into how might we statements. Maybe I will try and put a big or a simple summary here just to kind of wrap up my insights, so to speak. These are all kind of insights about our work. Okay, so the core just because I've done this canvas, I know a little bit about what my project's about. We had some core business problems here. The inconsistency with the user experience was pretty big. We had the greater need for design and dev teams to collaborate effectively. And we also had the growing evolution of the product. That's a really big one. We knew all of these services or new designs would be coming down the line, and we weren't ready for it. So I'm going to take that and bring that over to here. Now, what's missing for me right now is we'll have an introduction to kind of the company, but there's not really an introduction to the product. I'm talking about what's wrong with it before I actually talk about the product. So my first draft of this short form case study might not be the last one. It is what we call a shitty first draft. So I'm going to say this is kind of the product intro, where I just briefly talk about, hey, this is the product. This is the company intro, where you actually know who we're dealing with first. Without the who, we can't really talk about the product. These are kind of the 3 business problems I'm going to target. And whilst these are important, this one's way more easier to relate to a business problem in terms of, hey, we're going to double the size of this product. We are not ready to be scalable. So that's going to form that first one here. You go over to user problem. Now, what about kind of what's happening? What's the pains of the users? From what I remember, there's disparity in the consistency of the design, so people aren't fully exactly knowing what to do. We also had another insight that should go under the business problem, and maybe we'll include this, maybe we won't. To train any designer to prototype in this company, you needed to train them on how to use HTML, CSS, code, and get them working with like Dreamweaver, pretty much turn them into front-end developers. So that was a problem as well. But we want the user problem. And as you can see, I've made a kind of a mistake here that there's 2 users here that I've split this between, and I haven't delineated those. These are the user problems of the design team. But what's slightly missing here is the user problems of the actual people using our product. So those user problems are kind of slower load times, inconsistency across the brand. So they use multiple different products and they look like they could come from different companies. And difficulty finding services. So those are kind of the core user problems that I'm going to go with right now. And my goal is to have an early draft and then see how can I make the narrative clearer. Does this make sense? If I had finished this canvas, something else I'd do is I'd probably run through this with someone. I would maybe run through people on the call right now. Someone who can kind of echo back to me what I'm saying and use that to draft maybe shorter summaries, find areas that I've missed. Like, because I have to talk about this out loud right now, we've noticed that there's missing pieces in the user problem. Okay, solution. This one's a bit easier. I want to showcase all the components I've done because it took a hell of a lot of work. It's what most of my day after this is going to be, churning out 30 plus documentation for every component and pattern we have. I want to talk, I really want to talk about how I was like managing and leading the team. This is a design manager role, not necessarily a design systems role, which I'm really trying to delineate those two, which can be quite hard to do because I've had senior roles, but I've also made a lot of these projects and done a lot of this busy work. I really want to at least showcase the facilitation. One of the big competing things for me right now is I just want to be facilitation mainly in my role, which we're moving towards, but it's going to take time. So if I need to apply for anything soon, I'm not going to have all the stuff I want. So I'm going to have to utilize what I have done to showcase my kind of senior UX designer level is kind of what I've got for most of my portfolio right now. So I can showcase all of that work. And later on, once I've got my projects that are way more tailored towards facilitation and maybe even more tailored towards management and leadership, then I'm going to redo my portfolio primarily with those case studies. I'm going to swap out the senior UX designer ones for the facilitation and manager ones. Cool. We've got some outcomes here. These are really, you can see that for the outcomes, I wasn't actually specific because I didn't have the numbers. I knew I could get them, but I said, okay, a good metric is going to probably be the number of services, the daily usage, some quotes if I can get them, and the quantity. So we're going to take these now, and these are going to be our starting point. Okay, so we've got the company, the product intro, we've got the business problem, we've got the user problem. We might combine them together, we'll find out. We've got the kind of solution, what we did, and we've also got the activities. Not activities, we've also got the outcomes. Now, something missing here is I could probably do with one more slide. And I think especially when it comes to design system work, showing a little bit of the outcomes of a process, so maybe a few deliverables along the way can be useful, but we're going to put that as an optional last extra. So I'll only include that if after doing these slides, I think we need it. What would that be? That would be probably something along the lines of, I'm trying to think, what are the main outcomes from the process? We did an audit of the product, so that's pretty useful. We did concept designs, so that's also pretty useful here. We also did a complete redesign of the dashboard for this product, which could be a whole case study in itself, honestly. But we kind of, because I'm going for a senior UX role, doing a specific UX UI case study on here's my dashboard redesign doesn't really sit at the same level that a senior UX designer might do. They often do things that are either a bit more ambiguous. They might have larger projects where they're doing multiple things under it, but it's all tied to some central reason or central figure. So I don't want to go too small in my case study, or else it kind of starts to look more like a mid-tier or just a pure UX UI designer instead of a senior UI UX designer. We really want to involve the strategy, the kind of big picture as much as we can. Okay, so we have our plan for the hero case study here. This is what we're going to do for that. And lucky last, because we're almost on time, what are we going to add for these last two? That's a really good question. I have a service design project that was on my last really bad portfolio. If anyone wants to see that really bad portfolio, I can show. It did get me my current role, so it's not that bad, I guess. So we had a service design project here, and I've worked through that a bit. So it's got to do with apprenticeships and supporting apprentices in their journey. This is a terrible title, but it at least tells me which case study is going where. So that's going to be my case study. One of my other case studies, that's going to be my service design case study. So let's also do service design and user research, because we also did in-field user research here. Okay, look, what about the last one? Oof. I'm going to go back to my achievements. Now, my achievements are not fleshed out as much as they should be. Like, really not. They could be way better. But we're going to use this as a space to figure out what's going to be next. This will be our lucky last. Let's see, I had usability testing. That's not really at the senior UX level. If I really want something a bit more advanced, if I can. I did have a strategic designer role that's not in here, where we developed the kind of design to delivery framework. We also did another UX backlog. That was another piece. Quite early on, I don't think I have anything from that. So I think the executive designer role for Thinkplace, despite it being a weaker role, it's going to be a single pager. So it's going to be way easier to showcase that instead of being as detailed as that hero case study. So I think the name pool of this consultancy plus the title of executive designer, I think is going to probably be a good insert into here. I'm just going to put a really bad title as well called supporting government clients, which is very bad. That's probably the worst title I've ever done. Let's maybe just say design uplift. Nope, that's also bad. Okay, well, it is good enough. We're going to have to keep it. We will work on this. Before we send this, we need the titles, the roles, challenges, and outcomes on these two. That's going to, and these should probably be swapped, actually. Both because one was linear and service designer versus executive designer sounds nicer. What's missing? We kind of want to include, I really want to include, here's other work I've done that maybe is a bit different than normal. So I'm going to create a second section that, because I don't want to make this too long, and it's going to be called other work. Very bad title, but again, we are looking for the end-to-end flow of this, not the minute details yet. Okay, so let's zoom out. What are we working with here? Okay, we have our draft introduction. We have the start of our first case study. We don't really have any of the in-between done yet, and we don't have the pictures or the other work in place, but we do know what's happening where. Okay, so for the next session, we're going to round that up now. I think we've got our draft. For the next session, what I find really important is to actually start with pictures, then start filling in the gaps from there. But we also have our outlines here. We have our little storyboard going, so we can turn what we have here into this layout. But we're going to start, what we're actually going to do is we're going to start backwards. I'm going to start from the end and work my way backwards. And then I'm not going to fill in the middle. I'm then going to start from the front and work my way forwards and then fill in the middle. So doing start and end first, and then there's probably 1 or 2 slides in between. Okay, we're about reaching time. So I think that was not too bad for an hour. We've got the layout, we've got the case study choices. They might not be the perfect case study choices, but I think they'll do for our first draft. Once we have our first draft here, it's going to be much easier to add on to it, to swap, because it's mostly all developed by then. It's just swapping out the case study, maybe changing the emphasis. We might create, after we've got this first version, we might duplicate it 3 to 4 times and just see, okay, if I swap these case studies out, if I change the way this narrative is going, which one kind of best targets maybe my positioning or a particular role. And then I can export them and send different versions depending on what role I'm applying for. I wouldn't have many versions. I'd probably have 3, maybe targeting really specific roles. Those would probably be senior UX designer, a facilitation person, and a startups, specifically targeting startups. My resume right now, great for startups, not very good for any other types of roles. It's very broad. How'd that go, guys? What did you guys think? I'd like to maybe hear, was that useful to hear and those thoughts out loud? Was it useful to kind of see the layout?
Very much so for me. And then I really liked your advice about starting from kind of the beginning, then completing the end, and then filling in the details in the middle. It feels much more approachable that way.
Definitely. And you know where you're starting and where you're going as well.
Yeah.
What about anyone else? Just want to check in. Did anyone have questions? If not, we're a few minutes early, so that's actually pretty good. On time for once. Now we have an option. I can keep going and try and do the hero case study now. It might take 20 to 30 minutes, which is where it's over our time already. Or we can leave that for next time. That's going to be a decision. Who would like to leave that for next time because maybe they have to go and would like to see it next time? Okay, I've got at least 1, 2 for Teddy, 3. Okay, cool. That's everyone. Perfect. That means I can go after this and do things I